I grew up in a family where both my parents were principals, so it came as no surprise when I chose teaching as a career. I enjoyed every minute of my 30-year-long journey with my students, my parents, teachers, principals, and my alumni. And I'm very fortunate today that I lead a large group of schools, both in India and in Singapore. And today I'd like to share with you a few ideas on how schools can contribute to shaping a better society in a fast-changing world. At a recent alumni meet, a young man with a very impressive designation said to me when I congratulated him, and he said this rather wryly, "I don't really derive joy in the work that I do. I don't see meaning. The reward for good work is more work, and I actually feel a void." And increasingly, I see many able, ambitious, and young people, and I'm saddened to hear their stories of disillusionment. Isn't it ironic that India has been more prosperous than it has ever been in centuries? And yet, India ranks 140 out of 156 countries on the happiness index, almost at the bottom of the scale. In a recent trend, we've had quite a few ex-IIT IIM graduates join our schools as teachers. Every year, 30 to 40 young women with successful careers are quitting their jobs in e-commerce, banking, engineering, hospitality, etc., to join our teacher training academy, choosing teaching as their second career, looking for meaning and joy through their work with children. The WHO predicts that 20% of India's population will suffer from some form of mental illness by 2020, and that's just around the corner. In other words, each one of us here will know at least 1 in 5 people who find mental illness a challenge. Substance abuse, self-harm, eating disorders, anxiety, depression, violent behavior, and suicide are on the rise amongst our adolescents. NIMHANS treats 5 to 7 teenagers every week for games addiction and porn addiction. The choice is ours, to ignore the data or to address it with various measures before it becomes a burden on our society and on the national exchequer. It's time that we studied teenagers in the yesteryears and our teenagers now. Teenagers in the yesteryears were from an agrarian economy or the industrial era, where they were apprentices that worked in the fields and the factories and contributed to the household income. They knew their place in society, they knew their place in the family, they felt valued and wanted. And in contrast, our teenagers today are growing up in a fast-paced world, extremely fast-paced world, driven by consumerism, competition, materialism, and technology. Our teenagers and our children are consumers. They consume, they receive the love and attention of their parents and teachers. They have all the resources available to them. They have the best of food, clothing, and shelter. They have access to the internet, libraries, anything that they desire. They consume wholly and in full measure. And the time has come for us to ask our children and our teenagers to be contributors rather than consumers, so they feel valued by the societies that they live in. Contribution is a transformational experience. In fact, it diminishes feelings of inadequacy. It engenders a sense of belonging. It builds self-esteem. It allows for self-efficacy in all of our children. And so the time has come for us to shift from a consumer mindset into a contributor mindset. So how can schools contribute to the well-being of our children and shape a better society for the future? Schools have never worked in isolation, and they've always contributed based on the requirements of their parents, their students, the boards that they're affiliated to, and society at large. So in the 60s, schools focused on academic excellence and character building, or value education. 30 years later, in the 90s, when I started my career as a teacher, India had liberalized. The knowledge economy had taken flight. India was swept away by the IT wave. And I remember a CEO parent telling me very, very proudly, 24% of NASA is Indian, and 25% of Microsoft in the US is Indian workforce. Yes, India has always provided skilled labor to the world. But why workforce? Why not leaders in the global arena is what I wondered. So schools in the 90s expanded their vision to include holistic education with emphasis on leadership, building, independence, self-reliance, and communication skills. So decades later, when products of the Indian school system, Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai, actually held roles of global responsibility in their companies, I was absolutely delighted as a teacher. So what should schools do going forward? Schools of the future, and that's the dream that I have, would contribute not just to skill building for the knowledge economy, but also contribute to society's well-being. And this dream can be realized only when schools, in partnership with parents, build social responsibility and emotional resilience in our children, because our children today are tomorrow's citizens. How do schools do this? I see a future where classrooms in schools will function as design labs where children can ideate and come up with solutions and various ways in which they can engage in acts of kindness, generosity, and service to others, thereby enculturing our youth in a culture of service and selfless action. I share some examples with you on contribution by children. A 4th grader sets the dinner table every week and prepares a salad for her family. A group of 6th graders offer to be friends and support the new students coming into their school. They want to be buddies to the new students coming into their school. A 7th grader builds an app to help his fellow classmates learn geometry more easily. In a school-driven initiative called Pay It Forward, requiring students to perform random acts of kindness, a 6th grader bakes cookies for his classmates, getting nothing in return except grateful grins and happy thank yous. A group of 9th grade students get together in order to help the support staff in their schools learn English. And at the end of it, the support staff has confidence that's sky high, so do the children. A 9th grade girl teaches the female inmates of Bangalore jail to make Tanjo paintings, which were then auctioned to generate revenue to support the inmates' families. A 10th grader helps the elderly retirees in his apartment community to load apps and use them, apps that help them book air tickets, movie tickets, purchase groceries, food, furniture, etc. A group of 12th graders get together to prepare or video a lecture series on their phones, which they circulate amongst their friends, can understand concepts in physics and chemistry better. Research has shown that when children engage in acts of kindness, their brains release dopamine, a feel-good neurotransmitter, thereby boosting their mental health and psychological well-being. In other words, when children contribute to the well-being of others, they improve their own sense of well-being. There is the argument that the hidden curriculum, that contribution has always been a part of the hidden curriculum in schools. Caring and sharing, teamwork and cooperation, supporting and encouraging one another, teaching one another, are all acts, excellent acts of social responsibility that are learned in school, in the corridors, in the playfields, and in the classrooms. So the time has come for us to ask of our children that they engage in such activity for their own health and well-being. The time has also come for us to work together as parents and as schools in order to develop emotional resilience in our children. Be there for them, build emotional connections, ensure two-way communication, but let them take their own decisions. Let them face obstacles. Let them fail. Overcoming failure helps them build the self-confidence to make informed choices and to problem solve themselves. And the aim is really to build a whole generation of children who have courage to face challenges boldly, to strive, to thrive, and to contribute as adolescents and as adults. So it is my dream going forward that schools of the future will promote a paradigm from individualistic, inward-looking, self-centered societal culture to a collaborative, outward-looking, service-oriented culture. Our children are our future. So let us ask of them not just perfect grades, but to contribute to the societies that they live in, their own homes, their neighborhoods, and their school, because it contributes to their sense of well-being. A happy child leads to a happy family, a happy community, and a happy nation.